Okay, so today we're going to talk about recording using this stage rack from Lost Ethos. So we talked in an earlier episode about this mixer, which is a 20-channel mixer, and its primary function is to take in all of the different inputs from the guitars, the bass, the drums, the vocals, all of our tracks. And then we use this iPad to mix the various monitor mixes for our in-ear monitors. So each musician can control that with an iPad. But another great thing about this mixer is that it is also a 20-channel audio interface. And so by plugging in here, a USB cable, I can run that up to my laptop here. And then basically in GarageBand, I've got 20 different inputs. And I use GarageBand because it's like a very easy, quick way to record. And I probably should move on to Logic, I know, but I don't know, somehow I've never got off the habit of using GarageBand to record the shows because it's just so easy. And so what happens here is that for each of the instruments, you know, Robert Vox, Charlie Vox, Tony Vox, Dan Vox, kick, snare bottom, top floor, each of these channels map to the channels here. And I just need to set the gain on these so the recording level is appropriate. And that's, by the way, the first thing I usually do, and then set the levels on the faders. I can then record the entire show. And so we often will just hit record at the beginning of a show. And this is the recording from our 47 Hill show last week with Bad Lemon and Rolling Blackout. Check those guys out. I'll tag them in the description here. And that way we get a beautiful recording, which we can go and mix them on a multi-track basis later. But you might, if you know this mixer, you'll know another thing about it is that it has an internal SD card slot and a whole recording function internally. So the other thing you can do, and I usually do, is just hit the record button here. On the iPad, you can flag which channels you want to record, and then you just record the whole thing directly to the SD card as well. And that gives you a nice backup. I like to use the laptop because I can see in the laptop where my recording levels are. And that's kind of a nice check when you're setting up a show, or are we clipping somewhere, the level's good, especially when you're doing it for other bands and it's not just your mix, which you've done at the rehearsals. But and you know, once it's already here, it's very easy to go and do a post-show mix or a post-rehearsal mix. But it's also really good to have that SD because sometimes something goes wrong, and this guy, for example, isn't 100% stable, and if that gets disconnected for a second, the recording stops. So it's always good to have a backup. And one of those projects I'm working on right now is to stabilize this guy with some kind of housing that's glued onto the front of that. There's a company that makes a thing called a Klingon, Klingon, which works on the small USB connectors, but I haven't found one for these big guys yet. But if I do, that guy is getting stabilized because it's a bit flaky. All right, cool. That's recording. And then I think when we come back for the next episode, I'm going to tell you all about snakes. I hope you don't mind snakes because there's lots of snakes coming.